And Mr. Chairman, we are live streaming, so whenever you're ready to begin, we have a quorum. And you're on mute.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let's call the meeting to order and let's observe a moment of silence, please. Put ourselves in the presence of the Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Let's entertain a motion to approve the minutes from October 10th, please.
So move.
Second.
Probably moving second. Any questions on those minutes? All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, ayes have it. Acceptance and dedication of rights of way, Mr. O'Brien.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Yes, sir. This is to accept our maintenance 784 linear feet of granite curb, which will be along Meeting Street, Stewart Street, and Nassau, in conjunction with a project at 584 Meeting Street.
Okay.
Move for approval.
Probably moved and second by the mayor. Any more discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Temporary encroachments. Anything exciting there, Mr. O'Brien?
No, sir. We just have 2 right angle signs, and we've received all the appropriate approvals from BAR zoning, and they've been inspected by engineering. So we recommend for approval and give you those as information.
Okay, thank you. Public Service Department update, G1 update on Municipal Operations Center.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call on Edmund Most from our capital projects department, the Department of Parks, who's going to give us an update on where we stand with the Municipal Operations Center. Edmund.
Most, with all the wisdom I see in your beard, you have the floor.
Who's this guy? I don't recognize him.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to do a screen share here. We prepared a couple of slides that will kind of walk everyone through here. Can everyone see that right now?
I can.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what we put together here is basically a brief timeline of what we've been doing basically the last year now. And I want to start off there in October of last year, and certainly appreciate the mayor reaching out to us and authorizing us to move forward with preparing an advertisement for professional services. As you know, we do the procurement here for our work in capital projects. So there's a little bit of time associated with doing that, and it helped us get a little jump on this. We finished up that. It was probably late December, early January with the holidays. And then we had to kind of dig in and start producing what the scope was going to be. Now, this was both for the design team and the contract manager at risk. So that's going to be the delivery method on this one, which is the same as the Gilliard, and the IAM was a contract manager at risk. So they're going to be kind of running sidecar with us, looking at pricing and kind of looking over the shoulder and being in all the meetings of the design team to make sure that, you know, what we're building is something that's cost effective and it won't impact the schedule too intensely. So to jump back into it, so March, we brought contracts to council with a notice to proceed. And basically the scope of that was to complete facilities inventory, look at everything that we have out there at Milford Street, inventory it, and then do needs assessment with all the various departments that are involved up there at Milford Street. So we met with the staff multiple times, and we took a lot of notes, and we basically built a very complicated spreadsheet. So we have a really good understanding what's out there right now and what we're going to need moving forward. As you probably all know, or most of you know, that in August, Highland Resources, the Magnolia developer, provided us 3-year notice, which basically said, hey, you know, we would like to reoccupy our land in 3 years. So again, it was great to have this little jump here to start procurement and the beginning part of this contract. And we're digging into it hard right now. So in September and October, we've been working on the conceptual design of what that facility is going to look like. Now, the only parcel of land that we own currently is the W.R. Gray site. And we're doing our absolute best to make everything fit on that. In October, in this month, we're finalizing the preliminary guaranteed maximum price. Now, this isn't what it's going to cost just yet, but we asked for the contractor to put together a detailed number as possible, because we in capital projects have to ask BFRC and council for a budget. So we have to make sure we have all of our ducks in a row before we ask for that budget. We're getting ready to extend those contracts for pre-construction pricing throughout design, and for the design team to see this project all the way through schematic design, construction documents, permitting, and everything else like that to CA. Looking ahead, and I'm getting ahead of myself here, fourth quarter, design team contract to council with authorization to proceed, assuming we have all that funding in place for that design team. And then this is looking really far ahead, really through 2022 and 2023 into 2024, we're going to be working on design and permitting. And there is some site work that we would like to start in that process. Really stuff that has long lead times, any environmental work, we'd like to start that sooner than later, just so we can get a jump on this project. But the design will be complete second quarter of 2024, and that guaranteed maximum price would come to council at that point for approval. And then the contractor's telling us, based on the scope and the size of this project, we're looking at late of 2025 for construction to be completed. Now, that's a couple of months after what our deadline is from Highland, but with public procurement and this large task that we have ahead of us, this is the absolute best we can do right now looking forward. Is there any questions on any of that? I do have some exhibits here.
Well, I do have a question now. Mr. Most, do we know where it's going to be?
The only parcel of land that we have that's large enough that we currently own right now is the W.R. Gray site on Herbert Street.
That's about what, 10, 11 acres, something like that?
It's actually 16 acres, but there is a land taking from the port for the interchange there. And we do have some limitations on stormwater just because this is kind of an outfall area here for surrounding parcels that go underneath the railroad tracks.
Right.
So we'll have to have some stormwater easements in there to move that water.
Is there a, I know a long time ago, you and Mr. Newman and I had a conversation about Mr. Mayor coming up with a, I'm gonna say a code, let's call it 1670 on city projects that would kind of maybe streamline the approval process. Could something like that be a benefit if we had something like that, a streamlined process for city projects? Because obviously, if the city projects are slowed up, it just adds to the cost of the taxpayer at the end of the day.
Sir, I believe you're, are you talking about through the permitting process or?
Yeah, just basically the approval process when we,
right.
all of that. I don't mean permitting through DHEC or anything like that. I'm talking about through our city approval process.
Right, TRC.
Right.
Well, there's also building review as well as fire marshal review too. Sir, to be honest with you, anytime we can accelerate permitting, I think that's great for the project. I think the challenge is the permitting workloads right now. There's so much in the pipeline. I don't know how you prioritize things, but it's certainly worth discussing though.
Let's do it at another time, but certainly when I look at this, obviously, streamlining and getting it through certainly makes sense. Anyway.
And Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Shade has his hand up.
Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Edmund, can I ask you to go back to that prior slide, the one before this one? So when you are looking at the inventory, which is at 1, 2, 3, fourth bullet point down, what do you have in mind for fire and police radio at this new proposed facility?
So I actually do have a site plan as the third slide. I can switch to that. And this is the W.R. Gray site. Right-hand side is that land taking from the port. And you can kind of see that breakdown in there. So what we need to do with police, because that's one of the smaller groups or departments that's going to have space in here, is we're looking at the size of the fire apparatus bay and the fire reserve, which is in this area right here. If you could see my hand on that pink.
I can see your hand. I can't read the fine print.
Right, and it's a 16-acre site, so I wanted to show kind of the entire site plan, but yeah, fire right now, because we don't have another location for police radio, we're going to have to nestle them into here somewhere, or we could probably share a couple of bays, and this would be public services fleet right here.
So why is police radio needed to be on this site? Why the police station itself is not suitable for police radio?
I to be honest with you, I don't know why it ended up being out at Milford Street. It may be one of those uses that, you know, it was a good fit years ago there. But it doesn't have to be connected to this site with everything else here. There are a few resources that they share, but if we were to develop a police fleet building elsewhere, it would certainly make sense to move the radio shop in with that police fleet building.
Is that something that IT needs to weigh in on?
IT is in lockstep with us when we go through projects like this, just because there's a lot of coordination that we need to do with our mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers and IT. So we kind of quarterback all these meetings and we bring in the departments on an as needed basis with the design team.
And I presume the police has been weighing in on this as well, the police department.
Yeah, they were one of the departments that we met with several times early to late spring.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody? I can't see everybody's hand, so please speak up if you want to be recognized.
Mr. Chairman. if
Yes,
I
sir,
may,
Mr. Mayor.
I did want to bring to everyone's attention, and Edmund, I think maybe 16 was the original size. It seems to me I remembered it was 14, but maybe that's after the 2.5 acres or so we lose to the Port Authority. So
That is correct, Mayor.
yeah,
It's down to 14. So we're going to a smaller site and we're expanding all of our footprints.
So I just wanted to point out how tight this is. You can see how dense it looks from the site plan, but it's deceptive from the site plan because Edmund didn't mention that right in the middle there where that purple area is actually a parking deck. So we did not have enough room on the site to stretch out and like we do at Milford Street. Yeah, there you go. So and it makes it very efficient in a sense, and there can be some benefits, but you got a parking garage with 5 levels there. On the ground floor will be able to accommodate trucks and part of the shop and everything else. So it's a very thoughtful design, but it does make the overall thing more expensive because you know, we really could have used another as much as 8 or 10 acres in my humble opinion, but I just wanted to share that with everyone.
Yes, sir. And just to add to that, you know, there's a very intensive vehicular use on this site. I mean, this is where all of our city vehicles are, where they're being maintained and stored. So the only item we really could go vertical with on this site was the vehicles. So that's what forced kind of the parking garage, is because the city employees coming to work need a place to park, but we also need to locate those vehicles on the same site. There's a lot of attributes about putting them in a parking garage. I mean, they're going to be that much more protected during a hurricane or a storm. They're going to be elevated. The site is actually high to begin with. It's in an X flood zone right now. It's about elevation 14. We're going to be adding about 1.5 feet of fill to the site to bring it up a little bit more. And then the other thing that you can see at this angle right there on the ground floor there, we would actually park the garbage trucks underneath the garage. So again, they would be protected. Now, obviously, if they had refuse inside of them, they would park outside of the garage, but it's just an added level to protect our investment and our equipment.
The parcel Also, you see what you got, public services, and,
This
go
one.
back to that. The one who owns that?
That belongs to the Coastal Conservation League. They are moving their Grove, Carolina facility there.
Oh,
And they've been renovating the building. I think they're getting ready to move in about a month.
oh, okay.
They sold their property on Morrison Drive to the Laurel Island developers because that proposed overpass through the county property, former county property, and across Morrison Drive went over the Grove, Carolina building.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, sure would be nice.
It would have been nice. I could tell you a few stories, but it's all water under the bridge now.
Gotcha.
We've certainly maximized what we have as a resource here. I don't
Oh,
think we
yeah.
should fit anything else on here.
I agree, but and I think this is great. And I certainly appreciate the work, but when you look at future growth in the city, I just wonder, we make a move like this. I mean, does it pass the 50-year plan or the 50-year test? I guess.
Well, that's really what we've been designing for when we did our needs assessment, was looking forward. I think what's going to really happen is our departments are going to have to learn to work differently at a facility like this. There's going to be a lot of advantages to having things in close proximity. But we're not going to have a lot of wasted space where we have a lot of laydown areas and stuff like that. We have to be very efficient with that space that we have.
Right. Okay.
This also is, I'm sorry.
And this is where a lot of police cars will be parked?
No
Oh.
police cars. So really the top end of this is the fire training in here. Over to the left, we're going to have fire fleet, and we're going to have training on the second floor. You can't really see it. Kind of second floor in here would be the fire training as part of this group over here.
Okay.
And we're going to have fire operations over here. I'm sorry, logistics over here. And then there's going to be fire reserve in the front here. And then to jump back, we're going to have all those bays for fleet maintenance in here. And then we're going to have offices upstairs for part of this. They'll share office space, or the floor would be also stormwater. Traffic and transportation would be on the first and second floors over here, the parking garage. And then these are like outdoor shed style storage areas here, parking here, outdoor sheds here, fueling center, car wash, lube center, and just as much parking as we can maximize on the site.
Mm-hmm. That's well thought out. Any other questions from committee members? All right, Mr. Moose, thank you again for your professional approach.
You're welcome.
All right, we move on to G2, Environmental Services Update. Mr. O'Brien and Mr. Alter.
Yes, sir. Mr. Altop's going to give us an update on where we are with our collections from Ian and our overall collections for garbage and trash for the last couple of weeks.
Matt, you're on mute.
Good afternoon. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So we are making some progress. It's slow going, but we are making progress. To date, we're at 2,700 tons. On a normal month, we are at 1,200 tons usually is the high. So we are over double what we normally pick up for the month so far. Crews have been working. They've worked 20 out of the 24 days since the storm. So they've been out there trying to get this stuff up. We made a pretty good dent on James Island last week. We were able to complete 3 out of the 6 routes, and the others were roughly around 30 to 50% done. So overall on James Island, I would say we're around 70%. Peninsula, we're probably right around 60%. And West Ashley, we're probably right around 60% as well. There's still a lot of debris out there. Our contractor is finding a lot of big piles still. We will be bringing that again to you guys tomorrow to extend those contracts a little bit longer and add a second truck to help clean some of this up even faster. You know, back in 2019, we had 23 out of our 31 positions filled for Dorian. We also had 25 contractors that were here helping. You know, that was a little bit bigger storm. We averaged about 90,000 cubic yards. And by the time this one is done, we'll probably be around 25,000. But we have 16 employees that are working and 2 contractors compared to the last one. So it's a big difference when you think about it. And you know, we were able to clean Dorian up in around 45 days. So there's a lot of debris. It's taking time, you know, traffic, because now we got to haul it up to Spring Grove, right? If it's mixed, so you got to sit in traffic. So that's an hour each time that they have to haul that up there. So it's slowing us down. The Peninsula stuff being over at the storage site is definitely helping on Mondays and Tuesdays. It's just the other 2 days a week where we're off the peninsula that we're really struggling.
Councilman Shaheen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just want to thank Matt. He's been very receptive to my calls and responses to particular neighborhoods. Called him again this morning, and he got a crew right out to one of the areas that needed some attention. Matt, just to go over those numbers again, I want to make sure I wrote this down right. So we're up to 27,000 tons, or
27,002 tons so far, and that's up until last Friday.
and our average is more than half that.
Yeah, so our
12,000.
average is 1,200 is what we usually average per month on a regular day, and that's with our guys working 5 days a week. So, you know, our guys have had 4 days off since the storm. You know, so they've been out there getting it.
And Matt, what your crews are looking at collecting is seems to me just to be the storm debris, the regular green debris. And I've noticed that the other type of debris that people put to the curb has not been addressed yet. So you're gonna come back again, I suspect, and pick that stuff up as well.
So we actually started picking that up last week. It's just on Saturdays, the landfill is closed. So we have to leave that sit when we run on Saturdays. If we didn't make it to that area, we have to leave it sit because we have no place to take it until Monday. And we don't want to load trucks and leave them sit in trucks. But we have started collecting all that bulk stuff again.
Okay. Then I think it's just sort of important, and you and I have talked about this before, it's just getting the word out to folks as to what's going on. And I know you're, with the resources you have available, y'all are working around the clock getting that. And I appreciate your work on that, and you and Mr. O'Brien's attention. We just need to let folks know what's going on and how far behind we are. So
Yeah.
Keep up the good work, and try not to bug you too much about it, but thanks for being responsive to that.
Problem.
Any other committee members? Mr. Alltop, have we contracted with any other private companies to help out with this?
So we are working with Affordable Lawn Care. He's actually got a big 100-yard grapple truck out running. He used that all of last week. He's the one that me and Amy and have been working on bringing you guys an extension for that tomorrow, and actually adding a second truck for him. We also have Affordable Land and Lawn Care, who's hauling debris out of our storage site for us. So our guys will bring it in and they will haul it out. So we actually have 2 contractors that is assisting at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
And Matt, that's in addition to our normal 2 contractors, Trident and Capital, helping us as well, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So Capital is not helping yet, but they are cleaning up Daniel Island as fast as they can. We've actually been sending over trucks to help them as well. Trident is getting close. They should be caught up hopefully by the next day or so, and then we'll be able to, if we need, to get us a truck. But they're having staffing issues at the moment as well. So.
Okay. Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Matt, thanks for everything you're doing. And I'm sorry for bugging you over the past couple of weeks, but you've You've handled it very well. Appreciate it. Can you just talk a little bit about some of these regulatory requirements that I've been hearing about in terms of documenting these loads and filling out paperwork, and why that's a requirement and how that's impacting the job that everybody's doing?
So we've been filling out paperwork to keep on hand in case we need it. Class or category A has not been declared yet, so we're not getting any reimbursement for Cat A yet. But we are keeping all the load tickets. I actually met with FEMA and SCEMD last week. I got a pretty good feeling that we might get Cat A, but we have not been issued that yet. So everything that we're collecting right now is on us. But we are documenting it. So if we do get it, we will have the documentation to help with that.
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Bowden has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Bowden.
Mr. Altop, for the uninitiated, what is category A?
So category A is debris. So
Why might money be available for something like that?
So Amy can go into that a little bit too. She's got her hand up. She can address it. We don't know. It has to get declared before we're eligible for the reimbursement, and it has not been declared yet by the governor.
All right, Ms. Wharton.
Good afternoon. So there's several categories when you get a FEMA declaration. We did get a FEMA declaration for category B, which is emergency protective measures, which is basically what we do to prepare for the storm and during the storm. And then thereafter comes several other categories, depending on what your damage is. Category A is debris removal. So in order to get any type of reimbursement at all, we have to do those load tickets and we have to have them available for FEMA. Otherwise, they will not reimburse us for the additional costs that we're incurring for the additional debris we're picking up. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, so your hand.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just by way of further explanation, I feel blessed that, Hurricane Ian had relatively small impact on our region. Normally, a hurricane that has a bit more impact and more debris, the county has a countywide debris contract that's set up for emergency cleanup. The county did not put that into effect this time because the initial reaction was we didn't think we were going to have that much debris, particularly compared to even recently Matthew, Irma, and some of these other storms. But I do feel that the debris has been more than what we were thinking it might be, like the day after the storm. We were all just breathing a sigh of relief, right? And there were some limbs and a few trees reported and all like that. And you heard Matt say that we've already here on the 20, well, really that would have been by Friday, the 21st, 2/3 of the month, we were already over double what a normal month would be. So October will probably be 3 times or a little more than what we normally do. And so anyway, I just thought by way of explanation, normally we really would have had the cavalry in with this big contract and this big equipment that's part of the county contract. That didn't happen. And that's what led us, thank you, Matt, to finding a couple other smaller local subcontractors to help us along with Capital and Trident as well. Everybody's just been really humping it for the last 20 some odd days, and we really thank you for your efforts, because we've been, for the most part, so to speak, going it alone.
Okay. Any other input? Councilman Shea.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Matt, to give us sort of a point of reference, and I'm trying to think of the prior storm since 2015, since I've been on council. What the other storms that have come through, it seems like we had like a storm a year
Mhm.
in 16, 17, and 18. What was the total tonnage for that cleanup? Do you remember?
So I can tell you what Dorian was. Dorian was a 91,000 cubic yards of yard debris and about 30,000 cubic yards of bulk debris, which is construction debris and things. I want to say that Irma was less than 100,000, but those are the only two that I can remember. I don't remember Matthew. I had just gotten here from Matthew.
You know, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot. That was sort of a making you go back into deep recesses of our collective memory. But if you could put together it's into the committee, a compare and comparison breakdown at some point when you come up for air. I know you're swamped right now, but if it wouldn't be too taxing on you, I'd like to sort of see where we would stand as to those. And I just remember seemed like in 2019 that was sort of a heavy hit with debris removal.
Yeah.
And that gives me sort of a point of reference as to historically how much tonnage we are handling with these storms.
So yes, that was Dorian, and that was one of our bigger impacts. That was about 122,000 for everything. That was yard debris and bulk, and that's when we had the county activated their contract, and we had 25 trucks running in our area alone. They had 75 countywide.
Mm-hmm. So if you wouldn't mind, next meeting, if you could just sort of put those numbers together for us and we could do a comparison, I appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I see Councilman Seeking to chimed in. I didn't know whether he had a question or comment.
No, Mr. Chairman, sorry I'm late. As you probably know, tonight's the night I teach, so it's a little bit late, but happy to be here.
Not a problem. Thank you. All right, Mr. Altop, the scholar and gentleman, thank you for the information you share with us.
No problem.
H1, Mr. Fountain, Barberry Woods Project, applying for a grant.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So H1 is the Barberry Woods project, as you mentioned. It's recommending approval to submit a grant application to the South Carolina Office of Resilience. This is their ARPA funding for a $7.6 million request on the Barberry Woods Drainage Improvement Project that we've discussed before at this committee. In this situation, they're not currently requiring a city match. They do only have about $50 million available, so there's a potential that they would adjust this award amount. If it's selected, they may offer a smaller amount of money, but we do have some drainage fund money allocated to this project already.
I appreciate you putting us in the game. What's the pleasure of the committee?
Move for approval.
Properly
Second.
moved and seconded.
I couldn't get my mute button off in time. Sorry.
Probably moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you. Mr. Fountain, H2, little change order.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is the Wapu Place Creek Drive drainage project. Basically, the way this is adding some valley gutter and a little bit of drainage inlet improvement at an intersection. The way the utility work ended up, we ended up with a series of like linear patches. This is the change order to basically do a single large clean patch rather than a sort of a patchwork of patches, as it were. So $6,225. It comes back before council because it was just over $40,000 in the original award, and we didn't include the language as a result to have approvals of up to $40,000 without council approval.
Move for approval.
Properly moved and
Second.
seconded by Councilman Bowden. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item H3, Glenn McConnell pipe installation update. Mr. Fountain.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. This is an update just because this item went to real estate committee as well today for looking for permission to acquire a temporary construction easement and a permanent construction easement. So I just wanted to make sure this committee was aware of what was happening with the real estate committee on the project. Those are both very small easements in wetlands, basically to install the pipes, room for jack and bore. Both easements are on the same parcel owned by the Carolina Bay Properties Owner Association, the HOA. They're valued at around $500 for each easement. So I just wanted to see if there are any questions. That's obviously necessary for us to move the project forward. So we certainly would ask for the support of this committee with the real estate committee for that purpose.
As many of us know, past real estate, because several of us on the real estate committee. Any questions, Mr. Fountain, on this one? Thank you, Mr. Fountain. Low battery, phase 2.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a quick update on this one. Obviously, the project has been substantially complete for some time, but we have now finished the kind of final change order closeout processes for the project. Just wanted to update the committee as we kind of reconciled all of the remaining quantities on the project. We actually ended up coming in $86,000 under the original construction contract budget on phase 2. Almost $12 million project. It's pretty good to see us be that accurate on the work. Frank Newham obviously did an excellent job managing this one and keeping it on schedule, on budget, and doing wonderful things on phase 3 as well. So I just thought we'd bring up some good news as we see escalating prices on a lot of projects. This one came in really well.
Man, really, that's fantastic, man, on something that big and specialized. Right? Councilman Seekin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Matt. I was down on low battery this weekend walking, and if you haven't been down recently, phase 3 is rolling along really well. They've already poured concrete as far as Battery Place, which is within just a few hundred feet of the end of that phase. It looks fantastic. So we've gotten really lucky with the weather, but more importantly, we've had really skilled people working on it. And so I just want to encourage all of you to get on and take a look while this project's ongoing. It's really coming along. It looks fantastic.
Thank you, Councilman. There's no doubt about it. When it comes to these projects, our department is the best in the state of South Carolina. Certainly compete being some of the best in the country. So we have these unique projects. It's special to all of us. And frankly, that's special to the nation, frankly. How many millions of people get to enjoy the battery? Great work, Mr. Fountain, you and your team. And certainly tell Mr. Newham, we say it as much to him. I mean, can't tell you how much we appreciate his work down there. H5, I think there was, Mr. Fountain, I thought we covered that at the last meeting.
We did, Mr. Chairman. This is just, you had asked for if there were any action items we could take out of the discussion from the last meeting. So I just had a few items. If you'd like to discuss them, we can.
No, that's fine. That's fine. We got the time. Go ahead.
Okay. So just very briefly, I think last time I kind of showed the pictograph version of showing where we were with staffing versus budgeted staffing versus targeted staffing. Just wanted to provide the backup for the actual documentation that went into those graphs, kind of showing how we would choose to realign positions, what that would do to typical pay rates for those positions, and then also show the basically some highlighted items where we feel these are probably the most short-term critical options for the adjustments, basically looking at for the field operator, and I can go into this any level of detail you want, but in the field operations group, really looking at more of these skilled positions. We've actually had some success with the HR department recently on looking at using more temp agency work on our ditch crews. We're still certainly not where we want to be for staffing, but it is an improvement. We've just about doubled the number of ditch crew workers in the last month, which is certainly an improvement.
Yeah, it is great. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have not had quite the same success with hiring, more skilled labor. So that was sort of what we highlighted here. The blue positions, which are generally like the jet factors, the heavy equipment operators, with an overhead load, would still sit around $285,000 for the adjustments that we're showing on this page. That's about 25 different positions we would be adjusting at that rate. And then within the kind of the professional services group, I did a similar approach. This obviously was a smaller overall adjustment, and then as a result, the kind of the more critical adjustments are smaller as well. Really, in this case, focused on the engineering positions where we've had the most challenge hiring and retaining. That would end up with about a $68,000 overhead loaded adjustment for that set of grades. I try to set both of these up without having to deal with compression issues, since these are in both situations more of our higher paid employees, so they don't have that compressional impact on pushing up the employees above them as well. It does end up being, again, a total of approximately between the 285 and the 68, just under $350,000.
Right. I see Councilman Seekins. I see your hand up. Is that from the previous question, or you want to be recognized?
No, I probably need to take it down. Thanks.
Okay. Any comments, any other committee members?
So,
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Chairman, in thinking about our vacancies, and particularly in certain positions, as has been with the stormwater department, where the vacancy rate, if you will, for that certain position is literally 50% or more.
mm-hmm.
That I believe that what Matt has proposed here is very reasonable. There's a reason there's a reason for those high vacancy rates, if you will,
Right.
and I believe not just stormwater but citywide, that positions that haven't filled in over a year, or where 50% or more vacancies have occurred, that to do an adjustment on the pay grade is appropriate to help fill those positions. So I just wanted to get the committee's concurrence on that theme, so to speak, that if we look at all those positions citywide that have over 50% vacancy or hadn't been filled, it might be just one person, but we hadn't been able to find somebody in over a year or two, then something ain't right.
Right.
We need to look at that pay grade, and that allows us to make some adjustments with the salaries for those positions. And I think that's reasonable and appropriate.
Mayor, I couldn't agree with you 99%. I agree with you 100% on that. I mean, we have to be nimble enough to pivot. The private market is telling us we don't want the job at that rate. I mean, and we need the production from jobs being filled. Mr. Fountain, great work again. And I appreciate, give my thanks to people in human resources for working with you on this one, because it does take that team approach. Let me ask this on the jet vac truck driver. From a layman's standpoint, if somebody's a long distance truck driver, could they also cross over and drive a jet vac truck?
It's the same license, Mr. Chairman. The only difference is obviously most of the long haul, or if you're a home-based driver that's still driving that size of vehicle, that the difference is you're typically not getting out of the vehicle and doing the skilled labor associated with the jet vector. So the jet vector, you have to learn to basically run the wand and the rod and the different components to the actual jet vac truck, in addition to the driving of the truck.
Mm-hmm.
There's a threshold that makes it a harder position to hire for, because you also have to have at least a CDLB, preferably a CDLA license, to be able to drive these, which is a relatively expensive license to acquire and limits the pool. But then there's almost a double challenge in that many truck drivers tend to like, driving rather than getting incredibly dirty and operating the equipment. So you have to have someone who's willing to do both, which is why we end up with a smaller hiring pool frequently than you would expect.
Is there another way to do that? In other words, somebody drive the truck and somebody drive a pickup truck to handle the wand?
So we set that up originally with the jet vac assistant positions. Those positions have been very hard to hire for. We ended up actually reducing how many of them we had, because that's probably the least successful position we have in trying to fill those vacancies, and that work is, again, both hard and hard from a physical perspective and hard from a competence perspective. So it really needs to pay similar to a CDL operator at that point, at which point you might as well just pay the operator to do both.
Right. Okay. So go back to the jet vac. What was that? I thought it was like 59,000 or something.
So for the current jet vac operators, and again, these are just general numbers, right? I'm not giving an individual person's salary, but the current jet vac operator positions pay about $43,000 per year.
Mm.
The assistants, for perspective, pay $34,000 per year.
And you recommended for the jet vac to go from 43 to what?
So again, we were trying to set this up without kind of completely breaking the compression issues and things that HR will talk about frequently. So we had to be a pay raise up to 49,000 for the operators and 43 for the assistants. Mm-hmm. And then the concept was, if you were to do that, prior to whatever the COLA would be there'd be an additional adjustment from the COLA, which might help, because these are two positions that we just generally can't hire for. So I'm afraid that a standardized COLA across the city won't necessarily make those positions hireable, because again, they would shift with all the other positions at that point.
So then, will we get back in the position that the mayor's talking about, having something at 49,000 and taking a year or more to fill it?
So it's challenging, Mr. Chairman, to know exactly where we will need to be. I mean, the way I built this system was trying to kind of respect the other rates within the city and within this department, so that we're not having to adjust sort of the whole city on a formal compensation survey, which would generally take, a year or so.
Yeah, I agree. So what was a driver at Sanders Brother on the shop track back? We know what they're paying?
It's a good question, Mr. Chairman. They were a few years ago, they were paying in the low 20s per hour. But that was before we also made our increases. I can double check with sort of what some of the private sectors are. I mean, you're seeing many of the CDLA drivers are generally getting hired between 50 and 70,000 from what I've seen in the industry, not for true long haul work, which tends to pay a little bit better, but is a difficult, different type of career path. I think UPS just announced they were going to hire CDL drivers. I'm trying to remember what they were paying. They were hiring, I think, 100,000 holiday workers for delivery. I had looked that up a while ago. Let me double check my notes really quick, Mr. Chairman.
It's just that when you have problems in that shop, fact truck pull up, man, that's help coming on the way, man. Those guys, they do a good job.
Yeah, and honestly, one of the challenges with our Vector trucks, right, is that we pay generally $500,000 or $600,000 for a Vector truck. We run roughly 7 of them, but we only have enough people to run 2 or 3 of them at the moment. So we have a lot of equipment sort of sitting on the yard waiting to be driven, and we could, in theory, stop, I guess, purchasing or sell some of our Vector trucks, but that seems like taking a pretty aggressive step backwards, perhaps, rather than forward.
Well, let's try to get the people to drive them. Sure.
That would certainly be my preference.
Okay. Well, you didn't know I was going to ask that question. You could bring that forward at tomorrow's meeting if you'd like. Save you some time.
Yeah, we could certainly do that.
Is this a actionable item we need to vote on in the committee?
So the only way we could basically make an actionable item out of it, if you wanted to, Mr. Chairman, if you desired, was to either choose to recommend a budgetary approval in this year's budget to be able to allocate that kind of resource, or either for the entire recommendation, which was the original thing we talked about last week, or for a partial implementation, similar to what the mayor was talking about with the positions that are exceptionally challenging to fill, which are typically our Vector truck operators, our skilled construction equipment operators, and then the engineering positions.
But that gets help this year?
So that would authorize the budget to be used that way. It still needs to go through the HR process on being able to actually make those implementations, but they would need budgetary approval in order to be able to do it as well.
Mr. Mayor, you want to make a motion?
Well, it seems to me clear we'd recommend these adjustments with the other salary adjustments we're making for the 2023 budget in total. But what would be helpful to you right now, Matt? Again, tell me that.
So, Mr. Mayor, that's a good point. So the challenge we normally run into with the normal budgetary process, which is has a lot of validity to it, is that you vote the budget through. It basically goes technically into effect January 1st. Then there's normally a couple of months while it works its way through sort of the HR process for each of the different positions. Then we're able to start writing position descriptions, advertising for those positions by the spring. You're typically in roughly a month to 2 months of advertising, then a month for the interview and hire process, then a month for the orientation and onboarding process. You're typically bringing people in sometime between summer and fall.
Right.
Depending on how that process works out.
Councilman Bowden.
It sort of sounds to me like the consensus is going to be to give approval to this plan. And I know we're all feeling the heat from our constituents that this is what they need, and they're absolutely right. So I personally don't want to wait till the spring. I kind of saw the faces as that was said, and I think that's again a consensus. Is there some way we can sort of signal like a pre-approval to HR to go ahead and get started on this, so when it is approved, goes into effect, we can be ready on January 1st to start hiring? I mean, I don't know what the barriers are to that, but I certainly hope we could kind of cut through some of the red tape and do that.
Couldn't agree with you. Well, Mr. Fountain, to follow up on this question, can we take some of the monies from jobs that went unfilled to help move this forward this year?
Yes, that's exactly right, Mr. Chairman. Is one of the options to start that process would be to authorize the budget this year, and then at least we can be working with HR on how we would do the forms potentially, and kind of, as Councilman Member Bowden mentioned, that would let us kind of get going now because you would already have budgetary approval for it for future.
I was reading Councilman Shade's mind. He had his hand up. You have a motion along those lines?
That was gonna be my.
I'll second Councilmember Bowden's motion. It sounded like a motion to me.
Yeah, and I was going to
Councilmember
second what Councilmember Bowden was recommending, to move this ball down the field here.
Okay, the person taking the minutes, Madam Clerk, you have that motion clear, or you need some help from us?
Yes, sir. We have it.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. We're all familiar with the motion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I think we had enough discussion on it. Thank you, Mr. Fountain, for breaking down a complicated subject for all of us to understand. Any other action, Mr. Fountain?
I don't think so, Mr. Chairman.
All right. With that, we're at the end of the meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilmember Shade.
under just two things for next meeting of this committee. We had the issue to come up with that earthen dam on James Island. Is that going to be on our agenda for next term?
Oh yeah, yeah. You remember, Mr. Mayor, about the abandoning of the road? I don't think that's going to happen. But anyway, the little greenway leading to the earthen dam that eventually.
Yeah, Mr. O'Brien's got his hand up.
Oh, Mr. O'Brien. Yes, sir, Mr. O'Brien.
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Shade, we're working with the legal department. As a matter of fact, we received a list of questions from Councilmember Parker today, which we've already started working on responding to those. I think, Julia, correct me if I'm wrong, but we probably need a couple of weeks to kind of gather all the information that the neighborhoods requested us. And before we take any action, we would get those questions answered. And then obviously we want to notify everybody over there who has an interest in, when we would meet and talk about this again. So Julia and I will get together. We've already got a meeting plan to get together and answer these questions that have come from the neighborhood and be ready to respond to the committee and the neighborhood in the next.
Cool.
Can I just make a recommendation, Mr. Chairman, that Tom just give us an update at the next meeting as to what he just discussed, and so we have I want to make sure we keep that discussion going and not let it just falter by the wayside. So
I agree with you. I think through the process, something good can happen over there, because when I looked at that property, it almost looked like Greenwood. It's a beautiful piece of land going in there. Council Lady Parker's on the line. I shouldn't have liked to extend a courtesy to her. One of the things before I recognize Ms. Parker, in going through those questions, can it be a process? Maybe somebody meet with the, and more of a question, I guess, with Ms. Parker, meet with the neighborhood association or those folk over there, and then get some results from that, and then bring it to the committee. Ms. Parker, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, that's absolutely what's happening. So Councilmember Shade, I just have to ask, what are your concerns here? Why? I mean, that's sort of what our plan was, like Mr. O'Brien just shared. The questions were shared with staff.
No, I just want to make sure that
I'm keeping in touch with the community. I'm just want to make sure I'm aware of any concerns that you might have.
the only concern I have, Councilmember Parker, is just to make sure that we keep this discussion ongoing and don't let it fall by the wayside. That's all.
You muted, Council Lady Parker.
I don't really have anything else. I was
Oh,
just,
okay. All right. I
you
got
know,
you.
I'm, it's in my district. I'm in contact with
Right.
staff and the community. You know,
Good, good.
Yeah.
We own it. Great. Any last items before we adjourn? Hearing none. It's been fun. We'll see you tomorrow night, and by acclamation, we stand adjourned.